The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Amara Johnson pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway of Hayes Industries. It was 5:30 a.m., and the 30-story building was quiet except for the sound of her wheels rolling across the polished marble floor. She had been working as a night janitor for 3 years, invisible to most of the people who walked these halls during business hours. Amara was a beautiful young African-American woman with kind brown eyes and a warm smile that she shared freely with anyone who bothered to notice her. At 25, she had dreams that stretched far beyond these walls, but life had dealt her a difficult hand. She supported her sick grandmother and was slowly saving money for college, $1 at a time. This morning felt different somehow. As she approached the executive floor, she noticed something that made her pause. The door to the chief financial officer's office was slightly open, and she could hear voices inside. This was strange because Richard Coleman, the CFO, never came in this early. She checked her watch again. 5:35 a.m. The building was supposed to be empty except for security and cleaning staff. Curiosity mixed with concern as she quietly moved her cart closer. She could hear two men talking in hushed tones. Her cleaning duties required her to enter every office, but something about this situation felt wrong. She had learned to trust her instincts growing up in a tough neighborhood, and right now, those instincts were screaming at her to pay attention. "The transfers need to happen today," she heard one voice say. "Before the quarterly audit begins tomorrow." "Are you sure about the account numbers?" another voice asked. "If we mess this up, we're both finished. Trust me, I've been moving small amounts for months. No one checks the overseas accounts that carefully. By the time anyone notices, we'll be long gone." Amara's heart began to race. She knew enough about business from her community college classes to understand that what she was hearing sounded like theft. These men were talking about stealing money from the company. Large amounts of money. She carefully positioned herself where she could see into the office through the crack in the door. Richard Coleman was there, along with someone she recognized as Thomas Wright, the head of the accounting department. They were huddled over a computer screen, and she could see what looked like bank account information displayed. $15 million should be enough to start with, Coleman was saying. "We can move more next month if this goes smoothly." $15 million. Amara had never even seen $1,000 at one time, and these men were talking about stealing $15 million like it was pocket change. She knew she had to do something, but what could a janitor do against two powerful executives? Her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. It was a text from her grandmother asking if she would be home in time to help with her morning medication. The reminder of why she worked so hard, why every dollar mattered to her family, gave her the courage she needed. She quietly backed away from the door and continued down the hallway, her mind racing. She needed to tell someone, but who would believe her? More importantly, who could she trust? The CEO, Jonathan Hayes, had a reputation for being fair and honest, but he was also these men's boss. Would he think she was making up stories? As she cleaned the rest of the floor, she kept thinking about what she had overheard. $15 million. That money belonged to the company, to the employees, to the shareholders. It wasn't right for two men to just take it because they thought no one would notice. By 7 a.m., her shift was nearly over and she had made her decision. She would find a way to speak to Jonathan Hayes. She didn't know how, and she didn't know if he would listen, but she couldn't stay silent about what she had heard. As she was gathering her supplies, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Richard Coleman emerged from his office, looking nervous and checking his watch repeatedly. He walked quickly toward the elevator without noticing her. A few minutes later, Thomas Wright came out as well, carrying a briefcase and looking around cautiously before heading in the opposite direction toward the stairwell. Amara realized that whatever they were planning was going to happen soon, maybe even today. She had to act fast. She had never spoken directly to Jonathan Hayes in her 3 years of working here. She had seen him in passing, always dressed in expensive suits, always looking busy and important. He was a tall white man in his late 30s with kind eyes and a reputation for treating his employees well. But there was a big difference between treating employees well in general and listening to a janitor's wild story about executive theft. Could she really walk into his office and accuse two of his top executives of planning to steal millions of dollars? What if she was wrong? What if she had misunderstood what she heard? She could lose her job, and her grandmother needed the health insurance that came with her position. But what if she was right? What if those men really were planning to steal from the company? Could she live with herself knowing she could have prevented it but chose to stay silent instead? Don't you think Amara deserves to have her voice heard after witnessing something so serious? What would you do in her situation? Would you risk everything to do the right thing? Let me know in the comments below and subscribe for more inspiring stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. As she stood in the empty hallway weighing her options, she thought about her grandmother's words from the night before. Baby, you got to speak up when you see something wrong. Staying quiet never helped nobody. Her grandmother was right. She had to try. Amara spent the next hour working up the courage to approach Jonathan Hayes. She knew his routine from months of cleaning the executive floor. He always arrived at exactly 8 a.m. and spent the first 30 minutes reviewing reports in his office before his assistant arrived. At 7:55 a.m., she positioned herself near the elevator bank where she could see him arrive. Her hands were shaking as she organized cleaning supplies she had already organized twice. She wore her standard uniform, navy blue pants and a matching polo shirt with the cleaning company's logo. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and despite her nervousness, she held herself with quiet dignity. The elevator doors opened and Jonathan Hayes stepped out. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, well-dressed in a dark blue suit, with brown hair and green eyes that seemed alert and intelligent. He carried a leather briefcase and was already checking his phone as he walked. "Excuse me, Mr. Hayes," Amara called softly. He stopped and looked up, clearly surprised to be addressed by someone he didn't immediately recognize. His expression wasn't unfriendly, just curious. "Yes. Can I help you? My name is Amara Johnson. I work for the cleaning company. I clean this floor every morning." She took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something important about your company." Jonathan checked his watch but didn't seem impatient. "What kind of something?" "This morning around 5:30, I overheard a conversation in Mr. Coleman's office. He was there with Mr. Wright from accounting, and they were talking about transferring money to overseas accounts. $15 million. Jonathan's expression changed immediately. His casual politeness was replaced by sharp attention. "You overheard Richard Coleman and Thomas Wright talking about transferring $15 million? "Yes, sir. They said it needed to happen today before some kind of audit tomorrow. They were looking at computer screens with bank account numbers, and they said no one checks the overseas accounts carefully." "Are you certain about what you heard?" "Yes, sir. I know it sounds crazy, but I heard them clearly. Mr. Coleman said they had been moving smaller amounts for months, and this was going to be a bigger transfer." Jonathan was quiet for a moment, studying her face. She met his eyes steadily despite her nervousness. She had committed to telling the truth and she wasn't going to back down now. "Amara, this is a very serious accusation. Are you prepared for what might happen if you're wrong?" "Yes, sir. But I'm more worried about what might happen if I'm right and I don't say anything." Something in her tone seemed to convince him. He nodded slowly. "Come with me to my office. I want to hear exactly what you remember and then I'm going to make some calls." They walked down the hallway together, an unlikely pair, the billionaire CEO and the young janitor. When they reached his office, he gestured for her to sit in one of the chairs across from his large desk. The office was impressive but not flashy. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city, and the furniture was expensive but comfortable. Awards and photos lined the walls, showing Jonathan with various business and community leaders. "Tell me everything you remember," he said, sitting behind his desk and pulling out a notebook. "Start from the beginning." Amara recounted the entire conversation in detail, including the exact times, the specific words she had heard, and the behavior of both men afterward. Jonathan took notes and asked clarifying questions without making her feel like she was being interrogated. "You said they mentioned an audit tomorrow?" "Yes, sir. Mr. Coleman said the transfers needed to happen before the quarterly audit began." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "We do have a quarterly audit scheduled to begin tomorrow. Only a few people in the company would know the exact timing." He picked up his phone and made a call. "Security, this is Jonathan Hayes. I need you to pull up the access logs for the executive floor from early this morning. Specifically, I want to know who was in Richard Coleman's office between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. "Yes, I'll hold." While he waited, he looked at Amara with something that might have been admiration. "Do you realize what you've done? If you're right about this, you've potentially saved this company millions of dollars and protected thousands of jobs." "I just couldn't stay quiet about it, sir. It didn't seem right." "Hold on," Jonathan said into the phone. "Yes, I'm here." Richard Coleman and Thomas Wright were both in Coleman's office at 5:20 a.m. "Thank you." He hung up and looked at Amara. "Security confirms that both men were in the building exactly when you said they were. That's not proof of wrongdoing, but it's consistent with your story." Jonathan made another call, this one to what sounded like the company's legal department. He spoke in low tones about initiating an immediate investigation and freezing certain accounts pending review. After he hung up, he stood and walked to the window looking out at the city while he thought. "Amara, I want you to know that whether this investigation proves wrongdoing or not, I'm grateful that you came forward. It took courage to approach me with this information. What happens now? Now we investigate. Quietly and thoroughly. If Richard and Thomas are planning what you think they're planning, we'll catch them before they can follow through. What happens to me? Jonathan turned back to face her. Nothing bad happens to you. You've done the right thing and I'm going to make sure you're protected. In fact, I want to offer you something. Sir. You mentioned you're taking community college classes. What are you studying? Business administration. I'm trying to save money to transfer to a 4-year school, but it's slow going. How would you feel about Hayes Industries paying for your education? Full tuition, books, everything you need to finish your degree. Amara's eyes widened. I couldn't accept something like that. Yes, you can. And you will. You've potentially saved this company millions of dollars. Let me invest a fraction of that in your future. Tears formed in her eyes. Why would you do that for me? Because you did something difficult and honest when you could have stayed silent. Because you put doing the right thing ahead of protecting yourself. That kind of character is rare and it deserves to be rewarded. Amara wiped her eyes and nodded. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I accept your offer and I'm grateful for it. Good. Now, I need you to keep this conversation completely confidential while we investigate. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Excellent. Someone from HR will contact you tomorrow about the education arrangements. For now, finish your shift as normal and act like nothing has changed. As Amara left his office, she felt like her whole world had shifted. A few hours ago, she had been worried about making rent and buying her grandmother's medication. Now, her education was going to be paid for, and she might have helped save a company from being robbed. She thought about her grandmother's words again, staying quiet never helped nobody. She was right as usual. The investigation moved quickly. By noon, Jonathan had assembled a small team of internal auditors, IT security specialists, and external investigators. They worked quietly, reviewing financial records, computer logs, and bank account activity. Amara tried to go about her day normally, but it was impossible to concentrate on her afternoon classes at the community college. Her mind kept returning to the morning's events and Jonathan's incredible offer to pay for her education. She had called her grandmother during lunch break to share the good news, though she couldn't explain the full circumstances. Baby, God works in mysterious ways, her grandmother had said. You keep doing right and right things will happen to you. By 4 p.m., Jonathan's team had uncovered enough evidence to confirm Amara's worst fears. Richard Coleman and Thomas Wright had been systematically stealing from the company for 8 months. They had started small, taking a few $1,000s at a time and routing it through a complex network of overseas accounts. The $15 million transfer Amara had overheard them planning would have been their final and largest theft before disappearing entirely. Jonathan called an emergency meeting with the company's board of directors and legal team. The evidence was overwhelming. Altered financial records, unauthorized access to restricted accounts, and a paper trail that led directly to personal accounts controlled by both men. They would have been gone by tomorrow night, Jonathan told the board. If Amara Johnson hadn't overheard their conversation and had the courage to report it, we would have lost $15 million and possibly never caught them. The board members were stunned. Hayes Industries was a well-respected company with strong financial controls. The idea that 2 trusted executives had been stealing for months was difficult to accept. How much have they taken so far? Asked board member Patricia Williams, a distinguished African-American woman who had been with the company for 15 years. Just over $3 million, replied the lead investigator. All of it routed through shell companies to accounts in countries with strict banking privacy laws. We might have recovered some of it eventually, but it would have been a long and expensive process. And you said a janitor discovered this? Asked another board member. Not just discovered it. She risked her job to report it. She had no obligation to get involved, but she chose to do the right thing anyway. The legal team recommended immediate action. By 6 p.m., both Richard Coleman and Thomas Wright were in police custody, charged with embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The stolen money was frozen in various accounts, and the process of recovery began. Jonathan stayed late that evening, reviewing the complete investigation report. The scope of the theft was staggering, not just in dollar amounts but in the betrayal of trust. Both men had been with the company for over 5 years and had been considered rising stars in their respective departments. Around 9 p.m. he decided to call Amara. He had gotten her number from HR and wanted to update her on what had happened. Hello, she answered on the second ring. Amara, this is Jonathan Hayes. I wanted to let you know that the investigation is complete. What did you find? You were absolutely right. They had already stolen over $3 million, and they were planning to take $15 million more tomorrow. If you hadn't spoken up, they would have succeeded and disappeared. There was silence on the other end of the line. Amara, are you there? I'm here. I can't believe it was really happening. It was really happening and you stopped it. The police have arrested both men, and we're working to recover all the stolen money. Are you sure about the education offer? I keep thinking I must have imagined it. Jonathan smiled. I'm very sure. In fact, I've been thinking about it all day and I want to expand the offer. Expand it. I want to offer you a paid internship in our finance department while you finish your degree. You'll work part-time, learn about corporate finance, and get practical experience to go with your education. Mr. Hayes, I don't know what to say. This is too much. No, it's not enough. You've saved this company millions of dollars and protected thousands of jobs. Every employee here owes you a debt of gratitude, whether they know it or not. I accept, she said quickly before she could change her mind. Thank you so much. You don't need to thank me, Amara. You earned this through your integrity and courage. After they hung up, Jonathan sat back in his chair and thought about the day's events. In the business world, he was used to dealing with people who were motivated by money, power, or advancement. Meeting someone like Amara, who risked her own security to protect others, was refreshing and inspiring. He made a note to himself to personally oversee her internship program. Someone with her instincts and character could go far in the business world with the right opportunities and guidance. Meanwhile, Amara sat in her small apartment, still trying to process everything that had happened. 12 hours ago, she had been a janitor taking night classes and struggling to make ends meet. Now she had a full scholarship, a paid internship, and the knowledge that she had helped prevent a major crime. Her grandmother, who had been listening to her side of the phone conversation, smiled and patted her hand. I told you, baby. Good things come to good people. But this is just the beginning. You got to work hard and make the most of this chance. I will, Grandma. I promise I will. That night, as Amara lay in bed thinking about her future, she realized that everything had changed because she had chosen to speak up instead of staying silent. It was a lesson she would never forget. The next morning brought a new reality for Amara. She arrived at Hayes Industries for what she thought would be her regular cleaning shift, but Jonathan's assistant was waiting for her at the security desk. Ms. Johnson, Mr. Hayes would like to see you in his office before you begin your shift. Walking through the building felt different now. The security guards nodded respectfully, and she noticed a few employees looking at her with curiosity. Word was starting to spread that something significant had happened, though most people didn't know the details. Jonathan's office door was open, and he was on a phone call when she arrived. He gestured for her to sit and wrapped up his conversation quickly. Amara, good morning. I wanted to discuss the next steps for your education and internship. He handed her a folder containing several documents. This is your full scholarship agreement for the State University's business program. It covers tuition, books, supplies, and even a monthly stipend for living expenses. Amara opened the folder and stared at the papers. The monthly stipend alone was more than she currently made working full-time as a janitor. There's more, Jonathan continued. The internship will be 3 days a week in our finance department. You'll work directly with our new CFO, Patricia Williams, who I mentioned yesterday is now temporarily filling Richard Coleman's position. When would all this start? The university has agreed to let you begin classes immediately, starting with summer session. The internship begins next week. That gives you time to transition out of your cleaning position and adjust to your new schedule. Amara shook her head in amazement. Mr. Hayes, I need you to know how much this means to me. Not just the money but the chance to prove myself. You already proved yourself, Amara. Now we're just giving you the tools to build on what you've shown us. I have one request. What's that? I want to finish out this week with my cleaning crew. These people have been good to me and I don't want to just disappear on them. Jonathan smiled. I think that says everything about your character. Yes, finish out the week. But I want you to know that you're not just getting a job here, you're becoming part of the Hayes Industries family. Over the next few days, word spread throughout the company about what Amara had done. The official story was that she had discovered financial irregularities and reported them, helping to prevent a significant loss to the company. Most employees didn't know the full details, but they understood that she had done something important. The reaction from her fellow cleaning crew members was mixed. Some were genuinely happy for her success, while others seemed resentful that she was leaving them behind. Must be nice, said one coworker. Getting handed everything just for being in the right place at the right time. But Luis Rodriguez, the crew supervisor who had always treated Amara fairly, defended her. She didn't get handed anything. She earned it by doing the right thing when it would have been easier to mind her own business. On Friday, her last day as a janitor, the cleaning crew threw a small goodbye party in the break room. Luis presented her with a card signed by everyone. "We're proud of you, Amara," he said. "You show those executives what hard work and honesty can accomplish." That afternoon, Jonathan stopped by the break room during the party. His presence surprised everyone, as executives rarely visited the cleaning staff areas. "I wanted to personally thank all of you for the work you do," he said. "This building couldn't function without your dedication. And I wanted to especially acknowledge what Amara has meant to this team and to our company." He turned to Amara. "You're setting an example for all of us about having the courage to speak up when something's wrong. That's a quality we need more of in business and in life." After he left, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Luis started clapping and soon everyone joined in. Even the co-workers who had seemed resentful earlier were applauding. "That man didn't have to come down here," said one of them. "Shows he's got class." The following Monday, Amara began her new life as a business student and finance intern. Patricia Williams, who was now permanently promoted to CFO, took personal charge of her internship program. Patricia was an elegant woman in her 50s who had worked her way up through the company over many years. She understood what it meant to overcome obstacles and prove yourself in a competitive environment. "Amara, I want you to understand something," Patricia said during their first meeting. "This internship isn't charity. We're investing in you because we believe you have the potential to contribute significantly to this company's success. I won't let you down, Ms. Williams. I know you won't. But I also want you to know that this journey won't always be easy. You're going to be in classes with students who have had advantages you haven't had. You're going to work with colleagues who might question whether you deserve to be here. How do I handle that? The same way you handled the situation with Coleman and Wright. You stay true to yourself, you work harder than everyone else, and you remember that your character got you here." Patricia assigned Amara to work with different departments within the finance division, learning about budgeting, financial analysis, and corporate planning. Her academic background was limited, but her practical intelligence and strong work ethic quickly became apparent. "She asks the right questions," reported one department manager. "She doesn't just accept information, she wants to understand why things work the way they do." After her first week, Jonathan called Amara to his office again. "How are you adjusting?" "It's overwhelming but exciting. I'm learning so much every day. Patricia tells me you're doing excellent work. She also mentioned that you're studying late into the night to keep up with your coursework. I want to make sure I understand everything. I don't want anyone to think I'm not taking this seriously. Amara, can I give you some advice?" "Of course. Don't try to prove yourself to everyone. You've already proven yourself to the people who matter. Focus on learning and growing, not on convincing skeptics." It was advice she would remember throughout her journey, especially during the challenging times ahead. Summer classes at the university were intense. Amara found herself surrounded by traditional students who had been preparing for business school their entire lives. Many came from wealthy families and had advantages she could only dream of: tutors, internships, and networking connections that opened doors effortlessly. At first, she felt out of place. During her first accounting class, the professor assumed everyone had taken advanced math in high school. Amara had attended an underfunded urban school where basic algebra was considered advanced. She spent her first week frantically reviewing mathematical concepts that other students took for granted. "I might be in over my head," she confided to her grandmother one evening after a particularly difficult statistics class. "Baby, you think those other students could have done what you did? You think they would have had the courage to speak up to that CEO?" Her grandmother was firm but gentle. "You got something they don't have. You got real-world experience and the kind of wisdom that only comes from struggle." Her grandmother was right. While other students excelled at theoretical discussions, Amara brought practical insights from her years of observing how businesses actually operated. During a case study about employee motivation, she was the only student who mentioned the importance of treating support staff with respect. "I worked as a janitor for 3 years," she told the class. "I saw how some managers treated cleaning staff like we were invisible, and how others took time to learn our names and appreciate our work. Guess which companies had lower turnover and better performance from their support teams?" The professor, Dr. Catherine Martinez, was impressed. "That's exactly the kind of real-world application we need more of in business education." At Hayes Industries, Amara's internship was equally challenging but rewarding. Patricia Williams had designed a rotation system that exposed her to every aspect of the finance department. This week you're working with budget analysis, Patricia explained during their weekly check-in. Next week you'll be in corporate planning, then investor relations. Is this normal for interns? Nothing about your situation is normal, Amara. Most interns get coffee and make copies. You're getting the education of someone being groomed for management. The other interns initially resented the special attention Amara received, until they learned why she was there. The story of how she had saved the company millions by reporting the embezzlement had become something of a legend within Hayes Industries. You're like a hero around here, said Kevin Park, a junior analyst who often worked with interns. People respect what you did. But Amara tried not to let the praise go to her head. She remembered Patricia's warning about facing skepticism and Jonathan's advice about not trying to prove herself to everyone. The real test came during her rotation in investor relations. This department communicated with shareholders and Wall Street analysts, requiring polished presentation skills and deep knowledge of financial markets. Department head Robert Chin was known for being demanding and had initially opposed having an intern work in his area. This isn't data entry, he told Patricia bluntly. Investor relations requires sophisticated knowledge of financial markets and excellent communication skills. Give her a chance, Patricia replied. You might be surprised. On Amara's first day in the department, Robert assigned her what he considered an impossible task, researching and analyzing how the recent embezzlement incident might affect investor confidence. I want a full report by Friday, he said curtly. Include analysis of how similar incidents have affected other companies' stock prices and recommendations for our communication strategy. It was clearly a setup for failure. The assignment was complex enough for a senior analyst, let alone an intern who was still taking introductory finance classes. But Amara didn't see it as impossible. She saw it as an opportunity. She spent every spare moment researching, staying in the office until security had to let her out, and utilizing every resource available to her. She interviewed other department heads about the embezzlement's impact on their areas. She studied how Hayes Industries had communicated with investors in the past. She even reached out to professors at the university for guidance on financial analysis techniques. Jonathan noticed her working late one evening when he was leaving the office. Amara, it's 9 p.m. What are you still doing here? Mr. Chin assigned me a project on investor relations and the embezzlement situation. I want to make sure I do it right. Robert assigned you that. That's a senior-level project. Yes, sir. I think he's testing me. Jonathan smiled. What do you think of the test so far? I think I'm learning a lot, even if the report turns out badly. Can I see what you've got so far? Amara showed him her preliminary analysis. Jonathan was quiet as he read through her work, occasionally nodding or making notes. This is impressive, he said finally. Your analysis of comparable incidents is thorough, and your recommendations are practical and well-reasoned. Really? Really? In fact, I think Robert is going to be very surprised by what you deliver. Friday came, and Amara submitted her report to Robert Chin. She had worked on it every day after classes and during every break from her other internship duties. The final document was 25 pages of analysis, complete with charts, graphs, and detailed recommendations. Robert read it that afternoon while Amara waited nervously in the break room. At 4 p.m. he called her into his office. His expression was unreadable. Sit down, Amara. She sat, trying to prepare herself for criticism. This report, he said, holding up her work, is better than some analyses I've seen from senior staff members. Sir. Your research methodology is sound, your writing is clear, and your recommendations are actionable. Most importantly, you've demonstrated that you can take a complex business problem and break it down into manageable components. Amara felt a wave of relief wash over her. I owe you an apology, Robert continued. I gave you this assignment expecting you to fail, which wasn't fair. I was testing you based on my assumptions rather than your actual capabilities. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove myself. You've earned a permanent place in this department's rotation. If you're interested, I'd like you to spend an extra month here to work on some ongoing projects. That evening, Amara called her grandmother with the good news. I told you, baby. When you work hard and stay true to yourself, good things happen. I'm starting to believe you're right, Grandma. I'm always right. You just sometimes forget to listen. As her first semester progressed, Amara began to find her rhythm. She was still working harder than most students, but she was also discovering strengths she hadn't known she possessed. Her ability to see practical applications for theoretical concepts impressed professors. Her work ethic and integrity earned respect from colleagues at Hayes Industries. Most importantly, she was beginning to see a future for herself that had seemed impossible just months earlier. As autumn arrived, Amara had settled into a comfortable routine, splitting her time between university classes and her internship at Hayes Industries. Her academic performance had improved dramatically as she caught up on foundational concepts, and she was earning praise from professors for her unique perspectives on business problems. At the company, she had completed rotations in most finance departments and was beginning to develop specialized knowledge in corporate planning and analysis. Patricia Williams had begun including her in higher-level meetings, treating her more like a junior analyst than an intern. "You're ready for more responsibility," Patricia told her during one of their weekly meetings. "I want you to start working directly with our executive team on strategic planning projects." This new role brought Amara into regular contact with Jonathan Hayes. What had started as formal meetings between CEO and intern gradually evolved into something more collaborative and personal. "Your insights on the quarterly budget review were excellent," Jonathan told her after a particularly successful presentation. "You have a gift for seeing patterns that others miss." "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I think it comes from having worked in different parts of the company. I understand how decisions at the executive level affect people throughout the organization." "That's exactly right. Most executives lose touch with that perspective as they move up. You're keeping us grounded." These conversations began extending beyond business topics. Jonathan learned about Amara's background, her dreams of one day starting her own consulting firm, and her dedication to her grandmother. Amara discovered that despite his wealth and success, Jonathan was genuinely humble and deeply committed to ethical business practices. "Can I ask you something personal?" Amara said one evening as they worked late on a market analysis project. "Of course. Why did you believe me that first morning?" "I was just a janitor making a serious accusation against two of your top executives. Most people wouldn't have listened." Jonathan thought for a moment. "Honestly, I think it was the way you looked at me when you were telling your story. You weren't asking for anything except the chance to do the right thing. That kind of sincerity is rare. I was terrified you'd think I was making it up. The fear in your voice actually convinced me you were telling the truth. Someone making up a story would have been more confident, more polished in their delivery." Their working relationship was beginning to feel like a genuine friendship. Jonathan found himself looking forward to their collaborative sessions, and Amara felt increasingly comfortable sharing her ideas and opinions. One November evening, they were reviewing quarterly reports when Amara noticed an inconsistency in the expense data. "Mr. Hayes, look at this line item. The marketing department's consulting fees jumped by 40% this quarter, but their campaign results don't show corresponding improvements." Jonathan examined the numbers. "You're right. That's a significant increase with no apparent return on investment. Should we investigate?" "Absolutely. But Amara, I want you to lead the investigation. This is exactly the kind of analytical work you'll need to master for your future career." The investigation took 2 weeks and required Amara to interview department heads, review contracts, and analyze campaign performance data. What she discovered was concerning but not criminal. The marketing department had hired an expensive consulting firm that was providing minimal value. "They're essentially paying premium prices for basic services they could get elsewhere for half the cost," she reported to Jonathan. "What do you recommend?" "Terminate the consulting contract and bring some of the work in-house. The marketing team is capable of handling most of these tasks with minimal training." Jonathan approved her recommendations, and the changes saved the company nearly $200,000 per quarter. "This is the second time you've saved Hayes Industries money," he told her. "First the embezzlement, now this wasteful spending. I'm starting to think we should put you in charge of finding inefficiencies." Word of Amara's latest success spread through the company, further cementing her reputation as someone with exceptional analytical abilities and business instincts. At the university, her professors were equally impressed with her progress. Dr. Martinez, her business strategy professor, asked her to present a case study to the class based on her real-world experience at Hayes Industries. "Most students learn about corporate governance from textbooks," Dr. Martinez explained. "You can share insights from actually living it." Amara's presentation about discovering and reporting corporate fraud drew a packed auditorium. Students and faculty were fascinated by her story and the lessons it offered about ethical decision-making in business. "The hardest part wasn't deciding to report what I heard," she told the audience. "The hardest part was believing that my voice mattered. Too often, People think their position in an organization determines the value of their observations. After the presentation, several students approached her for advice about their own career goals. She found herself becoming an informal mentor to other students from disadvantaged backgrounds. "How do you handle feeling like you don't belong?" asked Maria Santos, a first-generation college student from a similar background. "I remind myself that I earned my place here," Amara replied. "Not through connections or advantages but through hard work and integrity. That's actually more valuable than what many other students bring to the table." Back at Hayes Industries, Jonathan began including Amara in strategic planning meetings with the board of directors. Her insights on employee perspectives and operational efficiency were proving invaluable to high-level decision-making. "She has an unusual combination of analytical skills and practical wisdom," Patricia Williams told Jonathan after one particularly successful board presentation. "Most people her age are either smart but inexperienced, or experienced but narrow in their thinking. I've noticed that too. She sees the big picture in a way that's rare for someone at any level." During the holiday season, Hayes Industries held its annual Employee Appreciation Dinner. In previous years, Amara would have been working as part of the catering setup crew. This year she was invited as a member of the finance team. The transformation felt surreal. 12 months earlier she had been invisible to most of the people in the room. Now she was being introduced to board members and senior executives as a rising star in the organization. "This is Amara Johnson," Jonathan announced during his speech to the gathered employees. "Many of you know her story, but I want to remind everyone what she represents. She shows us that excellence can come from anywhere in our organization, and that doing the right thing even when it's difficult, creates opportunities for everyone." After the dinner, Jonathan and Amara found themselves talking privately in the lobby as other employees headed home. "Can I tell you something?" Jonathan said. "Working with you this year has reminded me why I love business in the first place." "What do you mean?" "Business at its best is about creating value, solving problems, and helping people build better lives. Sometimes in the corporate world, we lose sight of that and focus too much on numbers and competition. You've never lost sight of it. That's why you listened to me that first morning." "Maybe. But you've helped me remember that the human element is what makes business meaningful. Your perspective keeps me focused on what really matters." There was something in his tone that made Amara look at him more carefully. For the first time, she realized that their relationship had grown beyond mentor and student, beyond CEO and intern. "Mr. Hayes. You know, we've been working together for months now. Maybe it's time you called me Jonathan." "Jonathan," she said, testing the name. It felt natural but also significant, like crossing an invisible line. "Better?" he smiled. "Amara, I want you to know that you've become important to this company. Not just as an employee but as a voice of conscience and wisdom." "Thank you. This opportunity has changed my entire life. I think you've changed things around here too. For the better." As they parted that evening, both felt that their relationship had shifted into something deeper and more personal. Neither was ready to name what was happening between them, but both recognized that their connection had grown beyond the professional realm. Are you rooting for Amara and Jonathan? Sometimes the most beautiful love stories start with mutual respect and shared values. What do you think makes a relationship truly meaningful? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to follow their journey. The next morning, Amara found herself thinking about their conversation as she prepared for her final exams of the semester. Her life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined, but she sensed that even bigger changes were still ahead. Spring semester brought new challenges for Amara. She was now taking advanced courses that required sophisticated understanding of financial markets, corporate law, and international business practices. The workload was intense, and for the first time since starting her educational journey, she began to struggle. Her advanced corporate finance class was particularly difficult. Professor Williams, a demanding academic with high standards, assigned complex case studies that required knowledge Amara simply didn't have yet. "I'm failing," she confessed to her study group after receiving a D on her first major assignment. "You're not failing," said Jennifer Liu, a classmate who had become a friend. "You're just catching up. Most of us took preparatory courses in high school that you didn't have access to. Maybe I'm not cut out for this level of education." "That's not true," Jennifer insisted. "You have insights that none of us have. Remember your presentation about corporate fraud. You understand business in ways we never will because you've actually lived it." Despite Jennifer's encouragement, Amara felt discouraged. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now she wondered if she had reached the limits of her abilities. At Hayes Industries, her internship responsibilities had expanded significantly. Jonathan had assigned her to work on a major acquisition project, analyzing the financial health of a potential target company. The work was fascinating but demanding, requiring skills she was still developing in school. "This company's cash flow statements don't make sense," she told Patricia during a progress meeting. "The numbers look good on the surface, but when I dig deeper, I can't figure out how they're generating so much cash with such low profit margins." "What's your instinct telling you?" Patricia asked. "Something's not right. But I don't have enough experience to know what I'm missing." "Trust your instincts. You've been right before about financial irregularities." Amara spent additional hours reviewing the target company's financial records, comparing them to industry standards and similar businesses. The more she studied, the more convinced she became that something was wrong. She decided to take her concerns directly to Jonathan. "I think there might be problems with the acquisition target," she told him during one of their regular meetings. "What kind of problems?" "I can't prove it yet, but I think they might be manipulating their cash flow reports. The numbers don't match what I would expect from a company in their industry." Jonathan had learned to take Amara's analytical instincts seriously. "Show me what you're seeing." For the next hour, Amara walked him through her analysis, pointing out inconsistencies and unusual patterns in the financial data. "You might be onto something," Jonathan said finally. "I want you to work with our external auditors on this. If there are irregularities, we need to know before we proceed with the acquisition." The investigation took 3 weeks and confirmed Amara's suspicions. The target company had been inflating their cash flow through questionable accounting practices that bordered on fraud. "We're walking away from this deal," Jonathan announced to the board. Thanks to Amara's analysis, we avoided what could have been a very expensive mistake. The successful investigation boosted Amara's confidence, but she was still struggling academically. Her grades in advanced corporate finance continued to suffer despite extra study time and tutoring sessions. One evening, after receiving another disappointing grade, she was sitting in the university library feeling overwhelmed when Jonathan appeared at her table. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised to see him on campus. "I came to see you. Patricia mentioned you've been stressed about your coursework. I don't want to bother you with my problems. Amara, your success is important to me personally, not just as your employer. Talk to me." She explained her struggles with the advanced finance course and her growing fear that she wasn't smart enough for the business program. "I keep thinking maybe I should drop back down to easier classes," she said. "Maybe I was wrong to think I could handle this level of education." Jonathan listened carefully before responding. "Can I tell you about my first year at business school? You struggled too. I nearly dropped out. I was 22, had every educational advantage money could buy, and I was barely passing my courses. The other students seemed so much smarter and more confident. What changed? I realized I was trying to learn the way everyone else learned instead of finding my own approach. Once I started connecting the theoretical concepts to real business problems, everything clicked." "How do I do that?" "By remembering that you have something most students don't have: practical experience. Don't try to learn finance theory in isolation. Connect every concept to something you've observed in the real world." Jonathan's advice proved to be exactly what Amara needed. Instead of memorizing formulas, she began understanding the business logic behind financial analysis. Instead of accepting theoretical models, she questioned how they applied to actual companies she had studied. Her next assignment was a case study about detecting financial fraud in corporate acquisitions. Drawing on her recent experience with the failed acquisition target, she wrote an analysis that impressed even the demanding Professor Williams. "This is graduate-level work," Professor Williams wrote on her paper. "Your practical insights add depth to the theoretical framework that most undergraduates never achieve." The success gave Amara renewed confidence. She realized that her unconventional background wasn't a disadvantage, it was actually her greatest strength. At Hayes Industries, Jonathan began giving her increasingly complex projects. She was no longer just an intern, she was functioning as a junior analyst with real responsibilities and decision-making authority. "I want you to lead the due diligence team for our next potential acquisition," he told her one morning. "You've proven you can spot problems that others miss. Are you sure I'm ready for that level of responsibility?" "I'm sure. But more importantly, you should be sure. Stop questioning whether you belong here, Amara. You've earned your place through performance, not luck." The new assignment required Amara to manage a team of senior analysts and external consultants. At first, some team members questioned taking direction from someone so young and inexperienced. But her thorough preparation and insightful questions quickly earned their respect. "She asks better questions than most executives I've worked with," one consultant told Patricia privately. She understands that numbers tell stories and she's good at reading those stories. The acquisition project was successful, and Amara's leadership was widely praised within the company. Jonathan made sure that her contributions were recognized at the highest levels of the organization. This is exactly the kind of talent we need to develop and retain, he told the board of directors. Amara represents the future of business leadership, analytical, ethical, and grounded in real-world experience. As the semester progressed, Amara found herself spending more time with Jonathan outside of formal work meetings. They would discuss business strategy over coffee, debate ethical issues and corporate governance, and share stories about their backgrounds and aspirations. "Can I ask you something personal?" Amara said one evening as they walked through the company's executive parking garage after a late meeting. "Always. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you hadn't been born wealthy?" Jonathan considered the question seriously. "Often. I think I would have been more focused, more driven. Having everything handed to you can make you lazy if you're not careful." "You're not lazy. You work harder than almost anyone I know." "I work hard now because I've seen what people like you can accomplish starting with nothing. It's inspiring and humbling at the same time. People like me. People with intelligence, integrity, and the courage to do the right thing even when it's difficult." There was something in his voice that made Amara look at him differently. She realized that their relationship had evolved far beyond mentor and student, beyond even friendship. The respect and admiration they felt for each other was beginning to transform into something deeper. But she also realized that the difference in their positions made any romantic relationship complicated. He was a billionaire CEO and she was still a student working her way through college. The power imbalance was significant, and she wasn't sure how to navigate it. For now, she decided to focus on her education and career development. But she couldn't ignore the growing connection between them, and she sensed that Jonathan felt it too. Summer brought a new phase in Amara's relationship with Hayes Industries. She had completed her first full year of college with excellent grades and was now considered one of the company's most promising junior analysts. Jonathan offered her a full-time position for the summer, with responsibilities that went far beyond typical intern duties. "I want you to work directly with me on strategic planning," he said during their end-of-semester meeting. "You'll be involved in board presentations, acquisition analysis, and long-term corporate development." "That sounds like a senior analyst position." "It is. You've proven yourself ready for that level of responsibility." The new role meant spending even more time working closely with Jonathan. They traveled together to evaluate potential business opportunities, attended industry conferences, and collaborated on complex financial models. The professional relationship continued to deepen into something more personal. During a business trip to evaluate a potential acquisition in Chicago, they found themselves having dinner at a quiet restaurant after a long day of meetings. "Can I say something that might sound presumptuous?" Jonathan asked as they waited for their food. "Go ahead. Working with you has been one of the best parts of my year. Not just professionally but personally. You've reminded me that business can be about more than profit margins and market share." "How so?" "You care about people. When you analyze a potential acquisition, you don't just look at the financial returns. You consider how it will affect employees, communities, customers. That perspective has made me a better leader." Amara felt her heart racing. "Jonathan, I need you to know that this job, this opportunity, has changed everything for me. Not just financially, but it's made me believe in possibilities I never thought were available to someone like me. Someone like you deserves every opportunity in the world. I used to think success was about working hard and hoping someone would notice. Now I understand that it's about finding people who believe in your potential and then living up to that belief. You've exceeded every expectation I had, Amara. And my expectations were already very high." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their dinner, but the moment had shifted something between them. They were no longer just employer and employee or even mentor and protege. They were two people who had developed deep respect and affection for each other. Back at the hotel that evening, they found themselves reluctant to say goodnight. "Would you like to walk around the city for a while?" Jonathan suggested. "I know it's late, but Chicago looks beautiful at night." They spent the next 2 hours walking through downtown Chicago, talking about everything except business. Jonathan shared stories about his childhood, his struggles with the pressure of inheriting a family business, and his dreams of using his wealth to make a positive impact on the world. Amara talked about her grandmother, her fears about fitting into the corporate world, and her growing confidence in her ability to succeed in business. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" she said as they sat on a bench overlooking Lake Michigan. "Of course." Sometimes I feel guilty about how much my life has changed. I have opportunities now that my grandmother never had, that most people in my neighborhood will never have. It feels unfair. What does your grandmother say about that? She says I should use my advantages to help other people get opportunities too. She says success isn't just about what you achieve for yourself. Your grandmother sounds very wise. She is. She's the reason I had the courage to approach you that first morning. She taught me that staying quiet when you see something wrong is just another form of selfishness. I'm grateful she raised you with those values. As they walked back to the hotel, Jonathan took Amara's hand. It was a simple gesture, but it acknowledged what they both knew. Their relationship had moved beyond the professional realm. Amara, I need to ask you something and I want you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you feel comfortable with how our relationship is evolving? I don't want you to feel any pressure because of our professional connection. Jonathan, everything good in my life right now exists because you chose to listen to me and believe in me. But my feelings for you aren't about gratitude or obligation. You've shown me what it looks like when someone leads with integrity and kindness. I care about you in ways that go far beyond our working relationship, he said quietly. But I also want to make sure we handle this appropriately. What does that mean? It means we take things slowly. It means we maintain professional boundaries at work. And it means we make sure that whatever develops between us personally doesn't compromise your career advancement. They agreed to keep their personal relationship separate from their professional collaboration, but it was easier said than done. At work, they maintained appropriate boundaries, but the connection between them was obvious to anyone who paid attention. Patricia Williams noticed the change immediately. You and Jonathan seem to be working well together, she said during one of their weekly meetings with a knowing smile. He's an excellent mentor, Amara replied carefully. I'm sure he is. Just remember that office relationships can be complicated, especially when there are differences in position and authority. Are you warning me about something? I'm giving you advice as someone who cares about your career. Be careful, be professional, and make sure that your personal feelings don't interfere with your professional judgment. It was good advice but increasingly difficult to follow. Jonathan and Amara found excuses to work late together, took longer business lunches, and scheduled more travel than was strictly necessary for their projects. One evening in late July, they were working on a quarterly report when a summer thunderstorm knocked out power to the building. Emergency lighting came on, but most of the office systems were down. I guess we're done for the night, Jonathan said, looking out at the rain pounding against the windows. I could stay and finish this by hand, Amara offered. No, it can wait until tomorrow. Besides, I don't want you driving in this storm. They gathered their things and headed toward the elevator, but the power outage had shut down the elevators as well. 30 flights of stairs, Jonathan said with a laugh. This should be interesting. As they made their way down the stairwell, their conversation became more personal than it ever had at the office. Can I ask you something I've been wondering about? Amara said as they paused on the 20th floor landing. What's that? Why haven't you ever married? I mean, you're successful, kind, attractive. I would think you'd have been married years ago. I was engaged once about 5 years ago, Jonathan admitted. But it became clear that she was more interested in my wealth than in me as a person. That must have been painful. It was educational. It taught me to be very careful about people's motivations. Is that why you were willing to help me? Because you knew I wasn't interested in your money? Partly. But mostly because I could see that you were willing to risk everything to do the right thing. That kind of character is rare. By the time they reached the ground floor, both were exhausted from the long walk down, but also exhilarated by the most honest conversation they had ever had. Amara, Jonathan said as they stood in the lobby waiting for the storm to pass, I want you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with gratitude or charity. You're a remarkable woman who would be successful with or without my help. And I want you to know that my feelings for you aren't about what you can provide for me. You've shown me what it looks like when someone leads with their heart as well as their head. When the storm finally passed and they walked out to the parking garage together, both knew that their relationship had crossed another threshold. They were no longer fighting their attraction to each other or pretending it didn't exist. Would you like to have dinner with me this weekend? Jonathan asked as they reached her car. Not a business dinner. A real date. I would love that, Amara replied without hesitation. As she drove home that night, Amara reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just over a year. She had gone from being invisible to being valued, from struggling to pay for basic necessities to having financial security, and now from being alone to being cared for by someone she deeply respected. But she also knew that the hardest challenges might still be ahead. Dating a billionaire CEO would bring scrutiny and complications she had never dealt with. She would need to prove, to herself and to others, that she could maintain her independence and integrity even as her life became more comfortable. For now, though, she was simply grateful for the unexpected path that had led her to this moment. Fall semester brought new challenges and opportunities for Amara. She was now in her senior year, taking advanced courses in corporate strategy and international finance. Her professors had begun treating her as a peer rather than a student, often asking for her insights on real-world applications of business theory. At Hayes Industries, her role had evolved into something resembling a junior vice president. She managed her own projects, supervised other analysts, and played a key role in major strategic decisions. The transformation from janitor to executive had taken less than 2 years, but it felt natural and well-deserved. Her relationship with Jonathan had also deepened over the summer. They had been careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, but their personal connection had grown stronger with each passing week. They spent weekends together, often taking quiet trips outside the city where they could simply enjoy each other's company without the pressures of their professional roles. One October evening, as they walked through a park near Amara's apartment, Jonathan brought up a subject they had been discussing for weeks. "I've been thinking about your plans after graduation," he said. "I still want to get my MBA eventually, but I'm enjoying the work at Hayes Industries too much to leave right now. What if you could do both?" "What do you mean?" "What if Hayes Industries sponsored you for an executive MBA program? You could continue working while earning your advanced degree." "Jonathan, you've already done so much for me. I can't keep accepting your help without feeling like I'm taking advantage of your generosity. Amara, you've saved this company millions of dollars and helped us avoid multiple costly mistakes. The company isn't giving you charity, we're making an investment in our future leadership." It was a discussion they had been having in various forms for months. Amara's natural independence made her uncomfortable with what felt like continued dependence on Jonathan's support, even though she had clearly earned everything she had received. "I want to propose something different," she said. "I'm listening. Instead of Hayes Industries paying for my MBA, what if I took out loans like any other student and earned it completely on my own? That way there's no question about whether I've earned my position." "That's not necessary, Amara. Everyone in the company knows you've earned your place through performance. It's necessary for me. I need to know that I can succeed without anyone's help." Jonathan understood her need for independence, even if he disagreed with her logic. "If that's what you want, I'll support your decision. But I reserve the right to offer you the best opportunities available once you have your MBA. Deal?" she said, smiling. Their conversation was interrupted by Jonathan's phone ringing. It was Patricia Williams calling with urgent news. "Jonathan, we just received a hostile takeover bid from Morrison Industries. They're offering 30% above our current stock price." "When did this happen?" "The paperwork was filed an hour ago. We need to call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." After he hung up, Jonathan looked troubled. Morrison Industries was known for aggressive business practices and had a reputation for buying companies, cutting costs dramatically, and laying off large numbers of employees. "This is serious," he told Amara. "If Morrison succeeds with this takeover, thousands of people will lose their jobs. What can you do to stop it? We need to convince our shareholders that Hayes Industries is worth more as an independent company than Morrison is offering to pay." Over the next several weeks, Jonathan and his team worked around the clock to develop a defense against the hostile takeover. Amara played a crucial role in the effort, analyzing Morrison's business practices and developing presentations for shareholders about the long-term value of Hayes Industries' independent strategy. "Morrison has acquired 6 companies in the past 3 years, she reported to the board. In every case, they cut research and development spending by at least 50% and reduced workforce by an average of 40%. Their short-term profits look good, but their long-term growth has been minimal." The takeover battle lasted 2 months and became a highly publicized corporate drama. Financial newspapers covered every development, and business television shows analyzed each move by both sides. Through it all, Jonathan and Amara worked as true partners, combining his experience and strategic vision with her analytical skills and fresh perspectives. Their professional collaboration was seamless, and their personal relationship provided mutual support during the stressful period. "I couldn't have handled this without you," Jonathan told her one evening as they reviewed shareholder voting projections. "Yes, you could have. But I'm glad I was here to help. Amara, there's something I want to discuss with you. Something personal." She looked up from the financial documents they had been reviewing. This takeover battle has made me think about what really matters in life, he continued. Building a successful company is important, but it's meaningless without people you care about to share it with. Jonathan, what are you saying? I'm saying that I love you, Amara. I'm saying that I want you to be my partner in everything, not just business. Her heart raced as she processed his words. I love you too, she said quietly. But you know this isn't simple. People will say I'm with you because of your money, because of the opportunities you've given me. Do you care what people say? I care about protecting what we have together. And I care about proving that I'm with you because of who you are, not what you have. Jonathan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Then let me ask you properly, he said, dropping to one knee beside her chair. Amara Johnson, will you marry me? She stared at the ring, a beautiful but not ostentatious diamond solitaire that reflected her practical nature and his thoughtful consideration. Jonathan, Before you answer, I want you to know something. I'm not asking you to marry me because I want to take care of you. I'm asking because I want us to take care of each other. What about the company? What about our professional relationship? We'll figure it out together. We're a good team, Amara. In business and in life. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. A year and a half earlier, she had been cleaning these very offices, invisible to the people who worked here. Now she was being asked to become partner to the CEO, both professionally and personally. More importantly, she thought about the man kneeling before her. He had seen her potential when no one else had, supported her dreams without trying to control them, and shown her what real partnership looked like. Yes, she said, tears forming in her eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. As Jonathan slipped the ring onto her finger, Amara realized that her grandmother had been right all along. Good things came to people who did the right thing, worked hard, and never gave up on their dreams. The takeover battle concluded successfully 2 weeks later, with Hayes Industries shareholders rejecting Morrison's offer by a wide margin. The victory was sweet, but it paled in comparison to the personal happiness both Jonathan and Amara felt about their engagement. We make a good team, Jonathan said as they celebrated with champagne in his office after the shareholders' vote. The best, Amara agreed, admiring the ring on her finger and thinking about the incredible journey that had brought them together. 6 months later, Amara stood in the bridal preparation room of the elegant downtown church where she and Jonathan would be married. Her wedding dress was a simple but stunning design in ivory silk, chosen to reflect her practical nature and natural beauty. Her grandmother sat nearby, tears of joy streaming down her face. Baby, you look like a princess, her grandmother said. But more than that, you look like yourself. Strong, confident, and beautiful inside and out. I can't believe this is really happening, Grandma. I can't. I knew from the time you were little that you were destined for something special. You just needed the right opportunity to show the world what I already knew. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of wedding planning, continued work at Hayes Industries, and completing her final semester of undergraduate studies. Amara had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration, and had been accepted into several prestigious MBA programs. She had chosen to attend the executive MBA program at the State University, maintaining her independence by paying her own tuition with money she had saved from her analyst salary. Jonathan had respected her decision while privately admiring her determination to succeed on her own terms. Are you ready, dear? Asked Patricia Williams, who was serving as Amara's matron of honor. Patricia had become not just a mentor but a genuine friend, and her presence in the wedding party symbolized how completely Amara had been accepted into the Hayes Industries family. I'm ready, Amara said, taking one last look in the mirror. The church was filled with an unusual mix of guests. Amara's side included her former cleaning crew colleagues, community college professors, and neighbors from her grandmother's apartment building. Jonathan's side included board members, business associates, and prominent figures from the city's corporate community. But the most important guests were scattered throughout both sections. The Hayes Industries employees who had come to know and respect Amara over the past 2 years. From security guards to senior executives, people who had witnessed her remarkable journey were there to celebrate her happiness. As the ceremony began, Amara walked down the aisle accompanied by her grandmother, who had insisted on taking the place traditionally reserved for the bride's father. She raised me, Amara had explained to Jonathan when discussing the wedding arrangements. She deserves the honor of giving me away. Jonathan stood at the altar looking handsome in his classic black tuxedo, but Amara could see beyond his formal appearance to the man who had believed in her potential and supported her dreams. His eyes were bright with emotion as she approached. The ceremony was simple but elegant, focusing on the commitment they were making to each other rather than elaborate traditions. When it came time for their vows, both had chosen to speak from the heart rather than recite traditional words. "Amara," Jonathan began, "18 months ago, you walked into my office to report something that could have cost you your job. You risked everything to do what was right, and in doing so, you showed me what true courage looks like." He paused, emotion making his voice unsteady. "You've taught me that real success isn't measured in profit margins or stock prices, but in the impact we have on other people's lives. You've made me a better leader and a better man, and I promise to spend the rest of our lives supporting your dreams the way you've supported mine." When it was Amara's turn to speak, she looked out at the assembled guests before focusing on Jonathan. "Jonathan, you saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You gave me opportunities one never imagined possible, but more importantly, you believed I deserved those opportunities." She took his hands in hers. "You've shown me that kindness and integrity aren't weaknesses in the business world, they're the foundation of real leadership. You've been my mentor, my partner, and my best friend. I promise to build a life with you based on the same values that brought us together: honesty, hard work, and caring for others." After they exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife, the reception was held in the ballroom of the city's finest hotel. The celebration brought together people from every part of Amara's journey, creating an atmosphere of genuine joy and community. During dinner, several people spoke about the couple. Luis Rodriguez, Amara's former cleaning supervisor, surprised everyone with his eloquent toast. "I've worked in this city for 20 years, cleaning offices and watching people go about their business," he said. "Most of the time we're invisible to the people in suits. But Amara was different. She saw everyone as important, treated everyone with respect. That's why I'm not surprised she's here today. Good people deserve good things." Patricia Williams spoke about watching Amara transform from an uncertain intern into a confident business leader. "In 18 months, I've watched Amara master complex financial concepts, lead teams of senior analysts, and save this company millions of dollars. But what impresses me most is that success hasn't changed who she is fundamentally. She's still the same person who risked her job to do the right thing." But the most moving speech came from Amara's grandmother, who stood slowly with help from her walker to address the assembled guests. "My grandbaby used to come home from that cleaning job so tired she could barely eat dinner," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "But she never complained, never gave up on her dreams. She used to tell me she was going to make something of herself someday." The elderly woman looked directly at Jonathan. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for seeing what I saw in her all along. But more than that, thank you for being the kind of man who deserves her love." As the evening progressed, Amara found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about that early morning 18 months ago when she had overheard a conversation that changed everything. The scared young woman who had nervously approached Jonathan's office could never have imagined standing here as his wife and business partner. During their first dance, Jonathan whispered in her ear, "Any regrets about marrying your boss?" "Former boss," she corrected with a smile. "As of tomorrow, we're partners." Jonathan had restructured her role at Hayes Industries to eliminate any appearance of impropriety. She would now serve as Director of Strategic Analysis, reporting directly to the board rather than to him. It was a position that reflected her proven abilities and removed any questions about favoritism in their marriage. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" he asked, referring to her first day in the new role. "Excited, not nervous. I'm ready to help build something even better than what we have now." The reception continued late into the night, but eventually the last guest departed and Amara and Jonathan were alone in their hotel suite. They had decided to postpone their honeymoon for a few weeks due to important business commitments, but neither minded. They were simply happy to be together. "Can I tell you something?" Amara said as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "Always. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. 2 years ago, I was cleaning these buildings and dreaming about someday taking a single business class. Now I'm married to you, I have an MBA program ahead of me, and I'm about to become a director at one of the city's most successful companies. Do you ever miss the simplicity of your old life?" "Never. But I do miss the clarity I had back then about right and wrong. Everything seemed so clear when I was just trying to survive and take care of my grandmother." "The clarity is still there, Amara. That's what makes you such a good analyst and such a good person. You still see things in terms of right and wrong, not just profitable and unprofitable. Promise me something, Jonathan. Anything. Promise me that if I ever lose sight of that clarity, if I ever start making decisions based only on money or status, you'll remind me of who I used to be." "I promise." But I don't think you have to worry about that. Your character is too strong to be changed by success. 6 months after the wedding, Amara received news that would test Jonathan's prediction. A major consulting firm offered her a position as a senior analyst with a salary that was nearly double what she earned at Hayes Industries. The offer was flattering and financially attractive, but it would mean leaving the company where she had built her career and learned everything she knew about business. "What do you think I should do?" she asked Jonathan over dinner one evening. "What does your instinct tell you?" "That money isn't the most important factor in this decision." "Then what is?" "Impact. Where can I have the biggest positive impact on people's lives?" "And what's your answer?" "Here. At Hayes Industries. We're building something that values people as much as profits. I don't want to leave that to chase a bigger salary." Jonathan smiled, but he wasn't surprised by her decision. "The consulting firm will be disappointed, but I'm proud of you for staying true to your values." "There is one thing I want to negotiate though." "What's that?" "I want Hayes Industries to start a scholarship program for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Kids who have potential but need opportunities just like I did." "That's a wonderful idea. How would it work?" "Full scholarships for business education, plus paid internships, plus mentoring from senior staff. We identify students who have the character and work ethic to succeed, then we give them the same kind of chance you gave me." Within 6 months, the Hayes Industries Educational Opportunity Program was launched with Amara as its director. The first class included 10 students from backgrounds similar to hers. Kids who worked multiple jobs while taking classes, first-generation college students, and young people who had shown exceptional character despite difficult circumstances. "This is how we create real change," Amara told the first group of scholarship recipients during their orientation. "Not just by succeeding ourselves, but by opening doors for others to succeed too." 1 year after her wedding, Amara stood in the same conference room where she had first told Jonathan about the embezzlement scheme. She was leading a board meeting, presenting the quarterly results that showed Hayes Industries' continued growth and success. "Our employee retention rate is the highest in our industry," she reported. "Our customer satisfaction scores continue to improve, and our community investment programs have been recognized nationally." After the meeting, Patricia Williams approached her. "You know, I've been with this company for 16 years and I've never seen it perform better across all metrics: financial, operational, and social impact. We have good leadership and good people. We have something more than that. We have a culture that values doing the right thing, even when it's not the easiest thing. That culture starts at the top with you and Jonathan." That evening, Amara returned to her grandmother's apartment for their weekly dinner together. Her grandmother was now 82 and needed more care, but she was still sharp and still dispensing wisdom. "How's married life, baby?" her grandmother asked as they sat at the same small kitchen table where Amara had once struggled with her homework. "Better than I ever imagined it could be." "And work?" "Challenging but fulfilling. We're helping a lot of people, Grandma. That's what success really looks like. Not just making money but making a difference." As they talked, Amara reflected on how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. She lived in a beautiful house now, wore expensive clothes, and managed multi-million-dollar budgets. But she still visited her grandmother every week, still remembered where she came from, and still made decisions based on what was right rather than what was profitable. "I got some news today that I want to share with you," Amara said. "Good news." "Very good news. Jonathan and I are going to have a baby." Her grandmother's face lit up with joy. "Oh baby, that's wonderful. A new generation to carry on the family tradition of doing right and working hard. I hope our child inherits your wisdom, Grandma." "Wisdom comes from experience, baby. Your child will have different experiences than we did, but if you raise them right, they'll develop their own kind of wisdom." That night, as Amara drove home to the house she shared with Jonathan, she thought about the lessons she would want to teach their child. Work hard. Be honest. Treat everyone with respect. Help others when you can. Never forget where you came from. Most importantly, she would teach their child what her grandmother had taught her: that staying quiet when you see something wrong is just another form of selfishness, and that speaking up for what's right can change everything. 3 years after that first morning when she had nervously approached Jonathan's office, Amara Johnson Hayes sat in her own executive office, reviewing reports and making decisions that affected thousands of people. The walls were decorated with her business degree, awards from industry organizations, and a photo of her with the first graduating class of scholarship recipients from the Hayes Industries Educational Opportunity Program. But the most important decoration was a simple framed quote from her grandmother: "Good things come to good people, but only if they have the courage to speak up when it matters. As she finished her work for the day and prepared to go home to her husband and their expected child, Amara smiled at the thought that her story was really just beginning. She had learned that success wasn't a destination, it was a journey of continued growth, contribution, and commitment to doing what was right. The scared young janitor who had once cleaned these offices was gone, replaced by a confident business leader who understood that real power came from lifting others up rather than climbing over them. And in making that transformation, she had not only changed her own life, but had helped create positive change for everyone around her. What an incredible journey. From janitor to executive, from struggling to thriving, all because Amara had the courage to speak up when it mattered most. Her story reminds us that our current circumstances don't determine our future possibilities. Sometimes one moment of courage can change everything. What moment in your life required the most courage? Share your story in the comments and subscribe to hear more inspiring tales of transformation and hope.